Have you ever caught yourself wondering if he's even thinking about you? Or maybe, if he misses you so much, why isn't he reaching out? You're not alone in this confusion. And here's the truth that changes everything. When a man genuinely misses you, he reveals it whether he wants to or not. Not through heartfelt messages or romantic gestures, but through unconscious behaviors, subtle shifts, and quiet moments he doesn't even realize are giving him away. Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, we're decoding something that leaves so many people completely baffled, the hidden signals a man can't suppress when he truly misses you. This isn't about games or trying to manipulate anyone back into your life. This is about understanding how masculine psychology actually works when it comes to loss and longing. Because while most men are conditioned to suppress emotional expression, they can't control the unconscious ways their behavior shifts when someone important is no longer there. If you've ever been confused by his radio silence, if you've sensed something brewing beneath the surface but couldn't identify exactly what, this is your moment of clarity. By the time we're finished here, you'll know precisely what to look for, and more crucially, how to interpret these signals with confidence instead of driving yourself crazy with questions. So grab something comfortable, take a deep breath, and stay with me through this, because those subtle signs you might be dismissing could be the clearest proof that you're occupying more space in his mind than he'll ever verbally admit. Let's break this down. You might be asking yourself, if he really misses me, why doesn't he just tell me? And that's actually the perfect question to understand everything about how masculine emotional expression works. Here's what rarely gets discussed. For most men, vulnerability doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels like a complete loss of control. From early childhood, boys receive consistent messaging to toughen up, stay strong, and never let emotional needs show through. They learn that expressing sadness, longing, or any form of emotional dependency is essentially admitting weakness. By the time they reach adulthood, this conditioning runs so deep that many men would rather endure emotional discomfort in silence than risk the exposure that comes with honest expression. But here's what's fascinating about human psychology. Missing someone is such a fundamental emotional experience that it doesn't simply disappear when pushed down. Instead, it finds other outlets. It shows up in behavioral patterns, energy shifts, unconscious habits, and involuntary reactions that reveal exactly what's happening internally, even when their mouth stays completely shut. Missing someone activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. It creates a genuine psychological discomfort that the brain tries to resolve. And when direct communication feels too vulnerable, that discomfort gets channeled into indirect behaviors, digital checking, proximity seeking, emotional testing, and subtle reconnection attempts. Some men will throw themselves into work to avoid feeling the absence. Others will monitor your social media presence obsessively while nevi are actually engaging. Some will reach out with seemingly casual messages that are actually emotional fishing expeditions. And many will maintain complete silence while internally battling the urge to reconnect. So if he's being distant, if the words you're hoping to hear never come, it doesn't automatically mean indifference. Often it means he's experiencing something he doesn't know how to process or express safely. And that's precisely why learning to read behavior instead of waiting for words becomes so crucial. In our next section, we'll dive into what these unconscious revelations actually look like when a man is missing you but staying silent. So what happens when a man misses you but doesn't text you directly? This is where everything gets confusing because most of us assume that caring equals communication. But when someone is emotionally guarded, overwhelmed, or uncertain about their feelings, silence can actually become the most revealing behavior of all. You just need to know what patterns to watch for. One of the most common unconscious behaviors is digital monitoring without direct engagement. He might watch your social media stories within minutes of posting, but never comment or react. He might scroll through your feed like random old photos, or somehow always appear online when you are. These aren't coincidences or accidents. This is someone trying to maintain emotional connection while avoiding the exposure of actual conversation. Another telltale pattern is indirect re-entry into your life. You might hear through mutual connections that he's been asking about you. He might comment on a group post where he knows you'll see it, send you a meme without context, or respond to an old story. He's not trying to start deep conversations. He's trying to feel your presence again without risking emotional exposure or potential rejection. Then there's proximity-seeking behavior. That restaurant he never used to visit, suddenly he's a regular. That coffee shop you mentioned loving, now he's discovered it too. Social events where he knows you'll be present. His attendance rate mysteriously increases. This isn't stalking or manipulation. It's unconscious gravitational pull towards someone his brain is trying to reconnect with. Pay attention to energy shifts in any interactions you do have. If you happen to run into each other or end up in the same social space, notice his behavior. Does he seem more alert when you're around? Does he ask subtle questions about your life, your relationships, your plans? Does he get quieter when you mention other people you're dating or spending time with? That emotional tension you might sense, the way he seems simultaneously drawn to you and resistant to getting too close, that's not confusion. That's someone battling between desire and self-protection. It's longing wrapped in pride, attachment disguised as casual interest. Many men also unconscious. Sly hold on to emotional anchors that connect them to you. Maybe he hasn't deleted photos. Maybe he still wears something you once complimented. Maybe he finds himself driving past places that remind him of shared experiences. These behavioral patterns are unconscious ways of maintaining connection when direct contact feels too risky. Here's what most people completely miss. When a man misses you but doesn't reach out, it's often not because the feelings aren't strong enough. Sometimes it's because they're too strong and he doesn't trust himself to handle the emotional intensity of direct communication. So instead of waiting for his words, start watching his patterns, because often the loudest "I miss you" is the one that never gets spoken aloud. There comes a point in every confusing emotional situation where you start asking, why won't he just tell me how he feels? But sometimes the better question is, what is his behavior already telling me? Because when a man misses you deeply but lacks the emotional tools or courage to express it verbally, his actions become the only reliable truth you can trust. Consider this pattern. Does he seem to reappear exactly when you start pulling back? Does his attention increase not when you're chasing him, but when you've stopped trying altogether? That timing isn't random chance. That's emotional radar. He senses the shift in your energy, notices your withdrawal, and without consciously planning it, his behavior changes to pull you back into connection. Another powerful indicator is the quality of effort he suddenly displays, not necessarily grand romantic gestures, but subtle, meaningful actions. He remembers details you mentioned weeks ago. He offers help with things he's never shown interest in before. He asks questions that seem deeper than casual conversation. Men don't invest attention in people who don't matter to them. When someone starts showing up with increased presence and focus, that's emotional investment expressing itself through action. Here's something particularly revealing. Watch how he responds to your independence and emotional growth. If you start posting more confidently, living your life more fully, and clearly thriving without him, does his behavior become more erratic? Does he suddenly become more present in your digital space or physical environment? This isn't coincidence. This is emotional conflict. He sees you moving forward and his unconscious mind starts protesting through behavior. Service-oriented gestures become another outlet for unexpressed feelings. Men who struggle with emotional vulnerability often try to reconnect through usefulness. He might offer to fix something, help solve a problem, or check in about practical matters. This isn't random kindness. It's an attempt to maintain connection and demonstrate value without having to expose emotional need. Also notice his reactions when your name comes up in conversation with others. Does he get unusually quiet? Does he ask follow-up questions that seem overly interested? Does he change the subject quickly or seem uncomfortable? These are involuntary emotional responses that reveal internal preoccupation. The truth is, behavior is often more honest than words because it's harder to control and manipulate. Someone can craft the perfect text message or rehearse what they want to say, but unconscious behavioral patterns reveal raw, unfiltered emotional reality. Words can be strategic. Actions are instinctual. When a man's behavior speaks louder than his silence, he's telling you everything about his internal emotional state without saying a single word. So when you're trying to decode mixed signals or confusing patterns, stop waiting for verbal confirmation. Start trusting what his actions are already making crystal clear. When a man has you on his mind constantly, he might never directly admit it, but his behavior will shift in one unmistakable way. He'll create reasons to connect with you, even when there's absolutely no logical reason for contact. It might be the most random message you've ever received. Hey, I just passed that bookstore we talked about once. Or this song came on and it reminded me of that conversation we had. Maybe it's sharing a meme, mentioning a dream he had, or asking about something completely insignificant from months ago. To anyone else, these messages might seem meaningless or even annoying, but to him, they're emotional release valves, safe ways to feel close to you without admitting how much mental space you're actually occupying. Here's what's really happening beneath those casual messages. You're living in his head rent-free. You pop up in his thoughts while he's driving, working, trying to fall asleep, or just sitting in quiet moments. And those seemingly random reaching out moments are his way of scratching that emotional itch without fully exposing how deep his thoughts actually go. This pattern is especially common when he's unsure about where you stand emotionally. He doesn't want to come across as needy or desperate. He can't bring himself to say, I've been thinking about you constantly and I miss having you in my life. So instead, he creates these small, safe opportunities for connection that give him plausible deniability while still satisfying his need for contact. Another version of this pattern shows up as unusual interest in parts of your life he previously never cared about. Suddenly, he's asking about your work projects, your weekend plans, your family, even your pets. He's not being friendly or making small talk. He's trying to maintain emotional threads between you two, hoping you'll match his energy and give him more insight into your current emotional state. Sometimes this reveals itself through delayed reactions. You haven't spoken in weeks, and then completely out of nowhere, he texts late at night, sends a voice message, or likes a photo from several months ago. He's not being strategic or playing games. He's revealing where his attention has actually been focused, on you. Men who think about someone constantly often engage in what psychologists call orbit maintenance. They won't come forward with big emotional declarations, but they'll create patterns of presence in your life. A comment here, a story view there, a reaction to something you posted, an accidental run-in at places they know you frequent. They're trying to stay in your emotional atmosphere without having to risk the vulnerability of direct emotional expression. If you're noticing these subtle connection attempts disguised as casual conversation, don't dismiss them as meaningless. That's his mind trying to stay emotionally close to you, even when he's not ready to be completely honest about his feelings. When someone thinks about you constantly, it shows up in these small but consistent ways. And this kind of quiet, persistent connection often reveals more about genuine emotional investment than dramatic declarations ever could. When a man misses you, you don't always need to hear it directly because his body will reveal what his words won't. Physical behavior is one of the most reliable forms of communication precisely because it's unfiltered, unedited, and largely unconscious. Unlike verbal communication, body language happens automatically, and when someone has strong emotional feelings they're trying to suppress, their physical presence becomes incredibly telling. One of the most obvious giveaways is how he handles eye contact when you're suddenly face to face again. If he's been missing you, you'll notice him either staring longer than feels natural or struggling to maintain normal eye contact at all. Why? Because looking at you activates all those suppressed emotions, and he's either drinking you in because he's been craving that visual connection, or avoiding sustained contact because it feels too emotionally intense. Watch his posture and body orientation when you're in the same space. Someone who's emotionally distant will typically position themselves away from you, crossed arms, angled body, distracted attention. But a man who's been missing you will unconsciously orient his entire body toward you. His shoulders turn in your direction, his feet point toward you, even when he's talking to someone else, and he'll lean in when you're speaking. His body is literally trying to get closer, even when his words stay carefully neutral. You might also notice nervous energy that wasn't there before. Fidgeting with his hands, adjusting his clothes repeatedly, checking his phone without actually looking at it, rubbing the back of his neck. These are all signs of internal emotional tension. He's not uncomfortable because he doesn't want to be around you. He's uncomfortable because being around you is bringing up feelings he's been trying to keep buried. Then there's unconscious mirroring behavior. When someone misses you and wants to reestablish connection, they'll subconsciously start copying your movements, tone, or energy. If you lean back, he leans back. If you cross your legs, he does the same moments later. If you speak more softly, his voice drops too. This isn't conscious mimicry. It's his brain trying to rebuild intimacy and rapport through physical synchronization. Pay attention to his energy when you first appear. Does he straighten up when you walk into a room? Does his voice change when he realizes you're there? Does he seem more alert or focused? These are involuntary physiological responses to seeing someone who's been occupying emotional space in his mind. The most revealing physical tell is lingering behavior. If he finds reasons to stay near you longer than necessary, positions himself where he can observe you, or seems reluctant to leave when natural conversation endpoints are raised, that's his body refusing to accept separation even when his mind is telling him to play it cool. Remember, conscious communication can be carefully controlled and strategically managed. But physical responses to emotional stimuli are much harder to fake or suppress. If you want to know if someone's been missing you, watch how their body reacts when you're unexpectedly in their presence. That's where the most honest truth lives. In today's digitally connected world, social media behavior has become a window directly into someone's emotional state. And when a man misses you but isn't ready to reach out directly, his online activity often becomes the clearest evidence of what's really going on in his mind. The most common pattern is what I call silent surveillance. He consistently watches your stories, often within minutes of you posting them. He doesn't like posts, doesn't comment, doesn't slide into your DMs, but he's there, watching, absorbing every piece of content you share. This gives him a way to feel emotionally connected to your life without the vulnerability of actual interaction. It's passive intimacy, no risk of rejection, no emotional exposure, but it satisfies that psychological need to know what you're doing and how you're feeling. Another revealing behavior is suddenly engaging with your older content. Maybe he likes a photo from 3 months ago, comments on something from last year, or reacts to stories you posted weeks earlier. This isn't random social media activity. This is someone who's been scrolling through your profile, probably multiple times, and finally worked up the nerve to leave some kind of digital footprint. It's his way of saying, I'm here and I'm paying attention, without having to initiate real conversation. Watch for what I call indirect posting. Content that seems designed for you to see. Maybe he starts sharing music you introduced him to, posts quotes that relate to your past conversations, or suddenly becomes more active on platforms where he knows you're present. This isn't general social media engagement. It's targeted emotional communication disguised as casual posting. Some men use their posting patterns as a form of soft communication. A moody photo, a meaningful song lyric, a throwback picture that includes you or relates to your shared history. These aren't random content choices. They're emotional signals, ways of expressing feelings indirectly while maintaining plausible deniability. Then there's the push-pull dynamic of blocking and unblocking, switching between public and private profiles, or dramatically changing posting frequency after you've stopped communicating. These erratic patterns aren't signs of instability, they're signs of internal emotional conflict. He wants to stay connected to you digitally, but doesn't know how to manage the emotional intensity that comes with that connection. Pay attention to timing patterns too. If he tends to view your content late at night during typically emotional hours, or right after you've posted something particularly personal or attractive that reveals when you're most on his mind, these aren't strategic social media moves. They're unconscious emotional impulses happening when his psychological defenses are lowest. The most telling behavior is what he doesn't do online. If someone who used to interact with your content regularly suddenly goes completely silent, but is still obviously viewing everything you post, that silence is actually louder than any comment could be. It means he's paying attention, but struggling with how to appropriately engage. Remember, social media gives us unprecedented insight into unconcepts. Aya's emotional patterns. When someone is missing you but not ready to communicate directly, their digital footprint tells the real story of where their attention and emotional energy are